All right, everybody, here we are for episode 47 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. I'm here with Wayne Yerke. Wayne, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing well, sir. Our Florida weather is finally kicking in. Low 90s, high 80s, and the humidity has returned. So.
Yes. It disappeared for a couple days last week, but you can tell it's back. I've been doing some yard work the last couple days, so it's been pretty hot out there.
Yes, sir.
So one thing I did want to talk about before we get started here is, and I know you're not into horror movies, so you're not one of these people, but recently a guy put out with his review of Saw, Spiral's story, a story of Saw, or whatever, Book of Saw, which is the new movie that just came out this weekend. Compared horror fans to depraved lunatics, and that we are most likely to go out and do bad things or some shit like that. And that's just ridiculous.
That seems like it's right on par with the video games that are going to turn everyone into mass murderers.
Right, and horror fans for a long time have been, had this stigma against us, which is why, directors, I think we've talked about, the guy dude that did Exorcist doesn't claim that as a horror film, because it was so negative to be like, oh, I made a horror movie. Everyone's like, oh, you made a horror movie? It's so gross. Now it's just, I had hoped it would have progressed, but it still seems like it's looked at negatively. So as a horror fan, that just bothers me. Don't listen to people like that, because they honestly have no idea what they're talking about. They just don't like the genre. There are lots of great indie art house horror that are actually really great films. There's lots of just sleazy, trashy, gory horror films that I love personally, that I just enjoy. And I don't like it when people tell me how I enjoy things. But that's not why I enjoy it.
I got 2 points, and we're going to kind of go down the rabbit hole already on this, but I will tie it all together. First point is there was a study done about the being scared and the endorphins or whatnot that are released are similar to what happens when you're on a roller coaster. Right. So does that mean that all people on roller coasters are evil people that are going to do bad things?
Yes.
A second point about just people putting stuff out there that doesn't make no dang sense. You are a Bears fan as well as I. And there was an article written about something about drafting positions, where Roquan Smith, the star middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears, was actually a less valuable draft pick than Mitchell Trubisky, because Mitchell played quarterback. And we all know how that played out, because analytics. Now, I know a lot of times analytics stuff, sports, it helps provide things. But in this case, what? Yeah. Anyway, point being, don't believe everything you read just because somebody's able to post and upload to the internet.
Exactly. And it's just one of those things that, again, as a horror fan, you hear it all the time. And people always kind of look at you weird when you're like, oh, yeah, it's, I love The Exorcist, or I love Evil Dead, or those type of films. And, they're films, just like any other films that we watch and review and talk about. So, don't feel bad as a horror fan. Just understand that those people probably just don't get it. It's about being scared. It's about seeing strange and inventive things. I think horror directors are some of the most risk-taking directors working today, because they can get away with it. They can take a lot of risks that major film studio directors cannot. And that leads to a lot of interesting creative films. So it's just something I wanted to talk about, because I don't like it when horror gets a bad rap from people that just don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, I am not the biggest horror movie fan, but I got to give it to you. It's like the creativity that comes into this stuff, and coming up with the script to how we're going to do that, to graphic design and special effects, all that stuff. It's a lot of creative instead of just boy meets girl or kids fall in love or
right. Yeah. It's different. And one like Darren Lynn Bousman, who did 3 Saw movies and now the newest Saw movie. The creative stuff that goes behind it too. You got to get creative with the kills in those movies. So he's like, what we'll do is we'll start with the trap, we'll start with the death, and then we kind of work backwards. And I think that's an interesting way to do filmmaking, which doesn't always work in a big budget movie. But when you're trying to do something different, especially in a Saw franchise that has now 9 movies, you got to keep it creative. And a lot of times in big studio movies, you don't get that, people wanting to stay creative, because it becomes cookie cutter at a certain point in time. You just, they like the first one, let's make it let's make this one like that one. But yeah, so I just wanted to say, horror fans are not crazy or we may be a little weird, but we're not crazy or depraved people. We just like things a little different than the regular film fan, I guess. But anyway, moving on. We're going to move on to our topic. Our topic today, I wanted to talk about an actor who was kind of pushed aside for quite a long time. And is finally starting to have a comeback, Wayne. And that is Brendan Fraser.
Nice.
I think a lot of us that grew up in the 90s definitely have a lot of respect and love for Brendan Fraser. He was in a lot of movies that we grew up on. And it was just a shame. And let's say it was the mid-2000s. He had reported some sort of sexual assault by an executive or an agent of some kind. And that basically blackballed him from Hollywood for quite some time. He's been kind of working his way back, doing kind of small indie stuff. Maybe not the best movies here or there, but he's been working his way back up, and he's finally gotten to the point where he's on a hit TV show that's now on HBO Max called Doom Patrol, which is the DC TV series. He was on the FX anthology series Trust, and now he's going to be in the new Darren Aronofsky film as the star of that film. And then later this year, we'll be reviewing, whenever it comes out, a new Steven Soderbergh film that he's part of the ensemble of, which is I'm excited about just because it's Soderbergh. It stars Brendan Fraser, Don Cheadle, and Benicio del Toro. So very excited for that. But I did want to start early on in his career, and definitely one of my favorite performances and favorite movies, Wayne, was Encino Man.
It's the Weasel, supporting cast.
Everyone remembers, obviously, Pauly Shore as the Weasel in that one, Weasel the Juice, if you will. It also starred Sean Astin.
Rudy.
Also
Rudy.
from Goonies. But yes,
Rudy,
also from Rudy. Can't really do that to Lord of the Rings, though. Kids these days, you'll know him.
Samwise.
There you go. From Lord of the Rings. And Brendan Fraser was kind of the main draw here. It was his second film. He had a small bit part in a River Phoenix movie the year before. But this was his first movie, his first starring role. And it was a huge hit with, our generation, Wayne. Mm-hmm. Directed by Les Mayfield, written by George Zaloom and Sean Sheps. It revolves around two kind of losers in high school, Sean Astin and Pauly Shore, who end up finding a caveman defrosting in their backyard, in Sean Astin's backyard, and he ends up coming back to life and kind of freaking out, and then they end up buying him clothes and stuff and making him a new student at the high school, and he becomes the ladies love him because he's attractive, and there's lots of humor with the Weasel the Juice with the machine, the squishy machine. Is it squishy? Slurpee machine. Squishy. Slurpee machine.
Hey, we don't talk about a poo anymore.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Squishy was from The Simpsons, wasn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, the Slurpee machine. Lots of great moments in this movie, especially from the bully too, Michael DeLuise, Dom DeLuise's kid. He is fantastic. Megan Ward from PCU is really good in this as well as the love interest. Robin Tooney, actress, makes an early appearance for her. Rose McGowan as well. So lots of 90s actors in this. Just a really kind of fun, goofy movie. I haven't seen it in a while.
Wasn't the actor that played Short Round in this, I believe? Let me just check on that real quick. Yeah, right here. Ki Hui Kwan, the actor who played, he was in Goonies as well, Sean Astin. Made an appearance in X-Men and The One.
Yeah, he did a lot of stunt work now. Yep. Yeah, so lots of just 90s, 80s stars in this movie. Obviously, I think it was set up to be a Sean Astin film, and then Brendan Fraser basically ends up stealing the show and becoming, up until Lord of the Rings, the bigger star of the two at that point. Because Sean Astin, if you look at Sean Astin's career, you'll see that he did a lot of B movies between this and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. A couple interesting things that I drew connections with. Really got a sort of Weekend at Bernie's vibe, where obviously Link isn't dead, but he's a caveman. But it's like, oh, he's cool, don't pay too much attention, don't look at him. But
it's the same premise basically, I think, and it worked. in Weekend at Bernie's 1. Weekend at Bernie's 2 is another animal.
Yeah.
Another example of a sequel that totally went in a completely different direction, but it didn't work out in the way they were hoping.
Yeah.
But Encino Man, it took that same premise from Weekend at Bernie's, and it made it work for us, because Weekend at Bernie's, while we enjoyed it as kids too, it was like in the late '80s, right? It was a couple years before this, so
right.
maybe not necessarily made for us. I felt like Encino Man was made for us.
Yeah, we were, 9 and 10. It's like, yep, a little lighthearted, not too much swearing if there was any, and
not really. Yeah, the introduction to Pauly Shore. I mean, that basically that launched his career too, as well as it launched Brendan Fraser's career.
Yeah, I haven't thought about Encino Man or anything like that related to it in a long time. And now that we're talking about it, that's just like, oh, the memories are flooding back, and all the just little tie-ins. Like, we could go because of the actor that played Short Round in the Indiana Jones movies. You go take it down that way. The 6 degrees of separation, we could go.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the amount of movies we could tie in right now. Yeah. So.
Well, and especially tying in Son-in-Law, Brendan Fraser reprises his role as Link, the caveman, in Son-in-Law in a random scene at a college party in the very beginning of that movie. Very fun kind of cameo if you grew up like we did in the 90s watching these movies. But no, there he is. And it was just the one scene that he was in. So it's kind of a fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
A fun little tie-in there.
Yeah.
All right. And then that same year, one of probably his more darker movies, I think, and one of my favorite movies that Brendan Fraser did, School Ties.
Talk about the range, and within 1 year,
yes,
starting your career, it's like hell of a year and hell of a way to start.
Yes, being in a hit comedy and then being in a drama about anti-Semitism, starring Chris O'Donnell himself, obviously Brendan Fraser in the lead role, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
Who never heard of him?
Yep. Introducing 90s kids to those two. It also had Cole Hauser, who would become a frequent guy who would work with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Anthony Rapp, Amy Locane. Just another like great 90s cast in this one. It stars Brendan Fraser, Chris O'Donnell, and Matt Damon. Those are your 3 leads. Mm-hmm. And it's this kid who's really skilled at football, David Green. And they basically hide the fact that he's Jewish early on because he's not supposed to be in. It's like a Catholic school, but they want to win, and he's that good at football. So it says a lot about the high school sports too, and how because a lot of people may not know this, but like the Catholic schools and stuff can actually go out and recruit people.
Oh yeah.
So they have that ability. But they brought him in as a Jewish man, and that eventually gets found out, and his classmates are ruthless, calling him dirty names, and Chris O'Donnell really the only one that kind of stays by his side. At first, he doesn't because he doesn't want to be ostracized like Brendan Fraser's character is. But I always remember that scene in the rain when he's standing outside yelling at the dorms, telling them to come get him. Like, you want to say it to my face, come at me. It's just a great, great scene. And like you said, in 1 year to show the kind of range that he had as an actor. Coming out the gate, his first 2 starring roles.
Yeah.
Just a crazy way to go.
Yeah. How many times has the cowards been parodied?
Oh yeah. Reused, taken in other movies and stuff. Oh, for sure. I didn't mention it. Directed by Robert Mandel. Oh, screenplay by Dick Wolf. Did not know that. Creator of Law and Order.
Nice.
So that's an interesting little tidbit there. He worked with on that one with Daryl Panasan too.
Just going through the cast, Coach McDivitt, played by Kevin Tighe. He was the bad guy in Roadhouse. Oh, no, he wasn't the bad guy. He was the bar owner in Roadhouse.
Yeah, Roadhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, being from Family Guy people, if you don't know why we said it like that. Ed Lauder also in it as well, too. He's a great character actor in a lot of things.
When was this movie supposed to take place? Do you remember off the top of your head?
It takes place in, let me take a look here, 1950s.
Okay. I was going to say, it's not present day.
No, it was like after World War II.
Right. Okay.
And it was, it's so bizarre because, like, and even today, the raging anti-Semitism that you kind of find in America, which seems to be more hidden than the outward racism that we deal with on a daily basis now since Trump became in power. I know racism has always been there. Trump didn't create racism, but you can't deny that when he became president, it wasn't more open. I feel like anti-Semitism kind of stayed hidden, though, for the most part. It did. There were some instances when Trump was when he was president, where there were attacks on synagogues and stuff like that today. Mm-hmm. So the fact that, right after World War II, where we basically went in and we were like, you can't hurt the Jews for being Jewish, that's just mean. And then we basically became horrible towards them in our own country. I don't know if it was because we lost a lot of men over there or what. I don't know where it comes from, where it stems from. There's always been this anti-Semitism that's been kind of, I guess to Jewish people it hasn't been hidden, but I feel like for me, like it hasn't been as out there as I would think it is. But now that I'm thinking about, maybe it has been, and I just haven't noticed it.
You got the lunatic lady from, is it Georgia? Marjorie, whatever. She's with the Jewish space lady.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's
equal.
You're right. It's still there. Like I said, I think maybe I had my head in the sand like a lot of other people, and it just didn't kind of register that it was still alive and well. And this is an important movie to watch, I think, to kind of help with that, maybe in a way, to show kids that, like, this is not how to behave. And what they did to him was wrong, and everything that they did to him was wrong. And in the end, the bad guys end up getting in this one, spoiler alert, Matt Damon is the real bad guy here, ends up getting his comeuppance. And
well, it just goes hand in hand that the idiotic hatred goes hand in hand with uneducated and stupidity,
which is very true. Yes, he plays a student that's there because his parents are rich and they're alums and all that stuff. So, he feels threatened by David once David shows up. We talked about son-in-law. Okay, there was With Honors. I enjoyed With Honors. It's not a very well-liked movie. I looked it up recently. I was like, wow, it's like 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. This one's with Joe Pesci. I'm not going to spend a lot on this one. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's a bunch of like college kids. Good cast: Joe Pesci, Brendan Fraser.
Yes.
Maura Kelly, Patrick Dempsey, Josh Hamilton, and Gore Vidal, of all people, is in this movie. It is a bunch of college kids like working on their thesis, and Brendan Fraser's character meets Joe Pesci, who's a homeless man who kind of ends up like opening his eyes to the world.
Right. He finds his thesis.
Basically,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember the biggest part.
He starts burning it. Yeah, he started burning it in his fire. Yeah.
The biggest thing that I remember is the big talk, the big monologue that he gives about if a woman's willing to give you her love, it's the greatest thing there is, or however he does in his Joe Pesci voice. And
yeah.
Very, interesting role, because when you think Joe Pesci, you either think Home Alone or you think mob movies. In my opinion, that's the
No, for sure. This was at Pesci's time when he was trying to separate himself. It wasn't until a couple years later where he came back with 8 heads in a duffel bag trying to rekindle the whole Joe Pesci-ist thing that you could be. But he did With Honors, and then he did the one where he's the private eye. There were a couple movies in between there that he was trying to kind of be a different actor. My Cousin Vinny, obviously.
My Cousin Vinny is an underrated treasure in my eyes.
It's a classic. However, in that same year, though, so With Honors, like I said, I enjoyed it. A lot of people didn't care for it. That same year, though, I think it was a movie that Wayne, our generation, loves to this day, Airheads. 1994. Oh. Directed by Michael Lehman, who's done a lot of things that I like, actually. Written by Rick Welch, starring Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Ernie Hudson, Michael McKean, Judd Nelson, Michael Richards, and Joe Mantegna. And I believe she's not in the main cast there, but I believe Amy Locane from School Ties, or not School. Not School Ties. Encino Man.
Encino Man.
Yes, was also in this, and she plays his girlfriend. Reggie Cathy, who just passed away recently, he has a great part in this. Let's see, Harold Ramis has
in School Ties as well.
Oh, she wasn't. Okay, so she's basically been following Brendan Fraser throughout his career.
Ride them coattails.
Rob Zombie and Kurt Loder as themselves. Mike Judge does the voices, obviously, Beavis and Butthead. White Zombie was in the movie as well during the one scene, which is fantastic, where Chris Farley pulls the nipple ring out of the gentleman who tries to accost him.
Yep.
So Airheads is a movie about struggling musicians, Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, called not the Wild Stallions. Wow, wrong movie. Love that movie. Called The Lone Rangers. And yes, they have made the Lone Ranger into many Lone Rangers, which doesn't work, obviously, as you know. Which is part of the joke of the
Joe
movie.
Montana.
Yeah, Joe Montana. You pluralize the Lone Ranger? So Montana is great in this movie. That's one line I always repeat from this film is, Milo, it's getting too loud. You're getting too old. And he pushes the dials up on the audio board. Love that. So they end up basically taking hostage a radio station who has turned them down. They hold them at gunpoint and they want them to play their music. And they end up becoming, the fans end up gathering outside and becoming enthralled with this band, the Lone Rangers, and loving them for all their weirdness and their quirkiness.
Right.
And it's a great introduction to Adam Sandler. I think he just joined SNL, so he hadn't yet released his Happy Gilmore was still a year away. Mm-hmm. And his other movie he did before this did not hit very well. So this was his first movie that people I think saw and noticed, and it was great for us. I still love this movie. I watch it as much as I can. Of course, my wife hates it, so I can't watch it all the time. But
well, Miranda, my wife Miranda, is also not a fan of anything comic related, really. Yeah, gosh, we are going down the nostalgia highway at 90 miles an hour for me right now. Mm-hmm. Gosh, I just remember watching this the first time and just being in awe of how much I enjoyed it. And just from the Marcus character, I believe it was Reggie Cathy.
Yep.
It's like, come on, mano y swine.
Yes.
And the just stupidity of Pep.
Yeah. Oh God, Sandler's character is hysterical. He's the pool boy.
Just the angry Steve Buscemi.
Oh, Buscemi is great
with the
too.
hot sauce and the water gun.
And the scene with Harold Ramis too. With who would win in a battle, Lemmy or God? God. Trick question. Lemmy is God.
And how just the craziness of David Arquette's character.
Oh, God, yeah. I want back in! You had your chance, man!
And then, of course, their demo gets eaten by the tape, the reel-to-reel.
Yes.
So they got to get the
girl, from the girlfriend.
The sheet that got pissed on by the dog. So it's like, that's not going to work either.
Yes.
All right, let's do it live. We're going to do it live!
Yes.
And then, of course, wipes his ass with his contract.
Yes. So, he wiped his ass with his own contract?
I love this guy.
It's such a classic, and it's great Farley, too. Sandler and Farley in this movie, they never really get any screen time together, but just having them both early on in their career in the same movie was great. Obviously, they would appear together again in a couple other films, but just to be in that movie together, I thought was a great added a great comic duo to that, and then Ernie Hudson as the cop outside, he was fantastic as well. Obviously, Ghostbuster.
Obviously,
that's a great tie-in right off the bat. Oh no, Ernie Hudson and Harold Ramis in the movie for
another one movie we could do 6 Degrees of Separation on and talk for hours about just let's go to here.
Exactly. All right, we'll move on to the next one. If you haven't seen Airheads, try to check it out if you can. I do want to mention, Wayne, I didn't realize this, but he also, and I've seen this movie maybe a couple of times, so that's probably why, and I just bought it recently because I was having a Pauly Shore nostalgia moment at one point within the last year. I haven't watched any of the ones I bought, but I bought In the Army Now. Apparently he's Link in that one as well. He's a cameo again as Link from Encino Man, so I don't really remember that one as much. The same year he had The Scout come out, which is a baseball movie. Decent flick if you haven't had a chance to see it. Let's see. Glory. He had a bunch of cameos. George of the Jungle was probably one of his next biggest movies, I would say. Obviously, people know we're getting close to the one that I think everybody still loves him for to this day. But George of the Jungle, I think, showed that he could be both a serious lead and a comic lead in the same film. Because it stretched his both of those muscles of him being just a giant goofball, but also being the character that you have to kind of stay with the entire movie. So he can't be a complete goofball.
I like that muscle tie-in where he got completely ripped to be George of the Jungle.
Yes. That one starred Brendan Fraser, Leslie Mann, Thomas Hayden Church, Holland Taylor, Richard Roundtree, and John Cleese. So a bunch of good actors in that one, directed by Sam Wiseman. It's, I think, one of those movies that surprised a lot of people. I don't think people expected to like that movie, but it was actually pretty funny. And if you kind of ignored it since it came out, I would say go back and watch it if you missed it, or watch it again.
I got to jump in real quick with one that he just was uncredited for. 1995's Now and Then is the Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this one, but this is a really nice, heartfelt tale of, four friends that grew up together and are there for each other throughout life. And
Christina Ricci. And,
it's a really touching, heartfelt, it makes your feels tingle in a innocent way. Sorry. Something a little weird coming out of my mouth.
No, that one, I mean, it's Christina Ricci, Rosie O'Donnell, Thora Birch, Melanie Griffith, Gabby Hoffman, Demi Moore, Ashley Ashton Moore, and Rita Wilson. So the older actresses in that movie play the older versions of the young actresses I mentioned. And then you get Hank Azaria, Janine Garofalo, Cloris Leachman, Bonnie Hutton, as we said, a cameo by Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
So after George of the Jungle, he did Gods and Monsters, which got a lot of award love. It's a movie about James Whale, the director of all the old Dracula and Bride of Frankenstein, and he was like an openly gay man in Hollywood in the 1920s and 30s, so it was like a big thing. So that's what that movie is about him getting older, because Ian McKellen plays him. Brendan Fraser plays the other lead character, Lynn Redgrave, Lita Devanovich. I'll read through that. I've only seen this one like once. I bought it recently. I've been meaning to watch it again. So I'm not going to talk much on it because I don't remember a lot of it. But I remember it being really good. It's about a lot of those earlier movies, about him making those movies and his legacy. Blast from the Past, 1999, rom-com. But in 1999, he probably did, I would say, his biggest movie, right, Wayne? Would you say?
Dudley Do-Right was fantastic.
You son of a bitch. Anyway, Dudley Do-Right was hot garbage.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The Mummy, where he played the legendary Rick O'Connell, was a huge hit, a big action movie, one of the biggest of '99, and a surprise for me. I remember when I went and saw this movie, it did well at the box office, so we were like, oh, well, it must be pretty good. So we went to check it out, and I was just in awe of this film. Like, it's a fun, comedic action flick, kind of horror film because it's about the mummy, so it's got that element to it. It's not very scary, but it does have some moments in there.
It's got some creep factor.
It does,
anxiety going on.
Oh, yeah, and the bugs, too, are nasty.
It's the flesh-eating scarabs. I went into this the same way I went into Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
The first one came out?
Yep.
No expectations at all. It's like, all right, what the hell? It's action. It should be, fun to see. And, boy, same reaction you had. Like, whoa, this is great.
Yep.
I think I went and saw this at least 2 more times in the theater.
Yeah.
Just taking my dad, and I think I went again with my aunt, or in some order, because...
Yeah, I think I saw it at least twice.
Everybody needed to see this, in my opinion, because... And just the little little minor characters, Hey, O'Connell, you're on the wrong side of the river. Hey, Betty, I've got all the horse. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
I've got all. Looks like I have all the horses. Looks like you're on the wrong side of the river.
Yes.
And then the smelly little guy at the beginning.
Yes. Oh God. And there's so many great characters. Let's look at the cast real quick, because you had a big cast for that one. Directed by Stephen Sommers, starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, Jonathan Hyde, Kevin J. O'Connor. I know they're actually missing some people there, so I'm going to go down to the full cast list here.
Oded Fehr.
Oded Fehr, that's who I was looking for. It's Ardeth Bay. He's the one that's kind of the protector of the curse and stuff like that, and he would go on to be in the sequels as well. Just a great cast, a great fun action movie. I just watched it last week. It still holds up. It's probably one of my favorite action films from that time. It just, every time you watch it, it's still a lot of fun.
I can't watch the first one without immediately turning on the second one, though. That's just how I roll for me.
We'll get to the second one here in a little bit.
Oh, spoiler! They made a second one.
They did a second one. Another one that I really liked was Bedazzled. That was the one where he It's a remake. He gets to be all these different characters again, showing his comic side to him, which I think because of the Mummy, even though he's funny in the Mummy at times, people don't necessarily remember his comedy, and that he's really good at comedy. And Bedazzled showed that he could be really funny. Directed by Harold Ramis, starring him and Elizabeth Hurley. Had a great supporting cast too. Orlando Jones is in that one. Frances O'Connor is the love interest. Paul Adelstein, Toby Huss, character actors. Brian Doyle Murray, of course. Just one of those films that it may be forgotten. I don't know. I know there was an original. I think it was with Dudley Moore, right? Yeah, because it's based off of the movie written by Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't seen Bedazzled, I do recommend checking it out. I talked about Monkey Bone on our animation episode.
Yes.
I love that movie. The Mummy Returns. So in 2001, we get The Mummy Returns, and it's not as good as the first one, but it is still very enjoyable. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It does introduce The Rock's Scorpion King, which then would end up, unfortunately, getting his own movie.
Yeah.
The one argument I think people can make from that is the CGI was not great for him. I don't know why. I don't know if they rushed it or what it was. It just didn't look great.
When I heard that this movie was coming out within 2 years of the first one, I was a little worried just because a lot of times when they get a hit and they try to rush the sequel out, it's probably going to be bad. And for me, I like this one a lot. Obviously it is not the first one, but if we're going to give the original an A, I think this one gets at least a B minus.
Oh, I would give it a B plus. I mean, it really does a good job of reminding you why you like the first one so much. It adds a bunch of new characters. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it brings in Dwayne Johnson, kind of like the start of his acting career. He gets a little bit in the beginning, and then, like I said, at the end, he's this big CGI monster thing.
I love that when he's the Scorpion Rock, he does the people's eyebrow.
Yes.
Right before he attacks. So.
Again, directed and written by Stephen Sommers, Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, Odette Fair, Patricia Velasquez, and The Rock. It's just a really fun sequel to the first movie. And it's just really enjoyable, and I think people should check it out. Quiet American was okay. Let's see. Apparently, a lot of cameos from Brendan Fraser that I just don't remember or realize. He played himself and Dickie Roberts, former child star. Looney Tunes back in action. I actually hear from a lot of people that they like this movie better than Space Jam, and that they felt that this did that idea a lot better. It probably helped that you had actors that were,
I mean, they're entitled to their incorrect opinion, but...
I haven't seen it, so I can't say.
It was cute.
Okay. Crash. So 2004. And now this movie gets a lot of criticism for winning the Best Picture over Brokeback Mountain. But it did deal with racism, I think, in a way that kind of brought it into a lot of people's minds. Now, I do remember people I work with like, I get it, racism bad. I'm like, well, then you didn't get it. Right. Like, if that's all you took out of that movie, like, you didn't get it. Now, I don't necessarily agree also with it winning Best Picture, but I really liked this movie. I thought everybody was really good, including Brendan Fraser. This is where he got to flex that serious muscle. He plays Sandra Bullock's husband in this.
Yep.
Great supporting cast. The whole ensemble, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, Terrence Howard. Let me just bring up the cast list. It'll be easier than me trying to remember.
Well, and this was where they incorporated the Matrix effect with the tinting, depending on what universe they're in or where they are.
Also from Traffic as well did that. Sandra Bullock, Don Cheadle, Matt Dillon, Jennifer Esposito, William Fichtner, Brendan Fraser, Terrence Howard, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Tandy Newton, Michael Pena, Ryan Phillippe, or Lorenz Tate. Like, that's your main cast. There's other supporting actors in that movie that are brought in later on. Directed by Paul Haggis, produced by Don Cheadle. Like I said, it would go on to win Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. I haven't seen it in a while, but when it came out, I did love this movie. I thought it was done really well. It's not about don't be racist. It's about being able to kind of recognize that everybody's lives have their own moments, right? Our lives are full of these little moments, and that's what this movie is about, I think. Racism being the center theme of that, but it's not just about racism. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film. A lot of great characters. There's characters that you think are good characters who end up being bad characters, and vice versa. A character in the beginning of the movie starts out really shitty and then becomes not so shitty by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason to why he's a shitty person. There's a reason to why the other guy becomes a coward essentially.
Yep.
There's just a lot going on in this film, and it really, I think, is an important film to be seen. I don't know. It does get a lot of hate because it does get to be. It's one of those movies that a lot of people claim like shouldn't have won Best Picture, and that's fine. Like I said, I could probably get on board with that. I honestly think Brokeback Mountain was a better movie.
I do. I agree 100%.
And I think it did get screwed over. But this, I think, it's funny because I think this was the beginning of them like, hey, we should probably recognize something about race. And instead, they ended up ignoring a movie about a homosexual romance, which I think people would have, at that time, would have loved to see that win Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
But they then basically ignored race for the next, 10 years. Like, it was almost like, well, we did it once, so let's move on.
Yeah, the pinnacle of Oscars, #so white.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So that was, I think, the tipping point where it's finally like, knock it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest and cleanest way I can say to express myself.
So yeah, if you haven't seen Crash, I do recommend seeking it out and judging for yourself.
Yeah.
You may hate it. I haven't seen it in years. Maybe it doesn't hold up. Journey to the End of the Night? Is it a Journey to the Edge of the World? Oh no, this is a different movie. This is a completely different movie. I feel like I saw this one, but I don't remember it, so we're going to skip over it.
Looks like you did a couple episode arc on the animated series King of the Hill, which I enjoyed in my childhood. Don't need to talk about it though, but hey, it's like shouting it out.
Journey to the Center of the Earth. That was probably like his last attempt to again get another franchise started. They did make a sequel. They replaced him with The Rock.
Yeah.
That does happen occasionally. Let's see. The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon. What did you think about this one?
This was heartbreaking for me because it was not good.
It wasn't good at all. No, it wasn't.
They replaced the Evie character. They replaced Rachel Weisz with. I forget. Oh, hold on. We can look. We have this amazing Google machine in our pockets.
It was Maria Bello.
Okay.
Yeah, they replaced her with Maria Bello, and they tried to do it like seamlessly in the beginning. They're in their house, and like they have this like romance scene with them, and it's like reintroducing that character, so you know she's going to be a different person. Right. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
The whole movie itself was just not great. I remember Rebecca and I went to go see this in Cicero in the movie theater out there.
Yep.
And we left it. We're just like, wow, what was that? I'm not quite sure what that was. It was a disappointment. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. And it didn't really do much. He did have Inkheart in the same year. I enjoyed Inkheart. I thought that one was decent. G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, he played Sergeant Stone, which is basically like Gun-Ho if you're a G.I. Joe fan. They just didn't name him that. I guess a silly name, I don't know. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to talk about, because his career is kind of... Oh, Gimme Shelter. In 2013, he did this movie. Rebecca and I just watched it probably a couple years ago. I just bought it for within the last week or so. It stars Vanessa Hudgens as a woman who is a drug addict and living on the streets, and then she finds out she's pregnant. Well, it turns out that her father is Brendan Fraser, who had her when he was like 17 and wasn't ready to be a dad. And so the mom raised the child, but the mom, played by Rosario Dawson, was also a drug addict and a horrible person. It was like a one-night stand type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so Vanessa Hudgens ends up having to like try to trust Brendan Fraser's character. He plays a good role here as the father who, at first, he's kind of hesitant to get involved, but then he realizes that he really wants to be a part of her life and the kid's life. It's a very kind of emotional film. It didn't get great reviews, but it's a decent film. I think people will like it if they haven't seen it yet. It's called Gimme Shelter, Gimme, and then Shelter.
You can really tell. Sorry, are you done with that topic? I didn't want to jump ahead, but this is where you can really tell that he's kind of being. Is blacklisted the word? Or
that's a word I saw used. Avoided? I don't know if avoided from major movies. I mean, he wasn't. He's cast in The Nut Job as a voice. The Poison Rose. I don't even know what that one is. Line of Descent, an Indian film. So, like, he had to go work out of the country. But then finally, as I said a couple years ago, he kind of broke into some TV roles. He was on Trust. He starred in an episode of Titans, which I assume was his introduction for Doom Patrol, because there was an episode called Doom Patrol. And then now he's a star of the show Doom Patrol. He's got another show called Professionals coming out soon. Like I said, his career is kind of back on track. No Sudden Move from Steven Soderbergh comes out later this year on HBO Max, and The Whale, which is based on a play, and it'll be directed by Darren Aronofsky, comes out, I believe, next year sometime. Both movies are in post-production, so I think his career is kind of getting back on track, which is nice to see, because it's a guy that really, he didn't do anything wrong necessarily. I know he did money troubles early on in the 2000s because of his divorce or whatever. But that's separate from the other reason that, like I said, he got, kind of blacklisted from major Hollywood productions until recently. And it's nice to see an actor like him, who always seemed like a pretty nice guy, get a second chance. And I'm looking forward to what he's going to bring to us in the future. And I just, like I said, I wanted to talk about him because I feel like he's an actor that I see all over Twitter and Instagram. Everyone's like, do you remember Brendan Fraser? So I want people to be like, yeah, we do, and we should still talk about him because he's got a lot of classic films I think that people still like.
Oh yeah, I don't know if are you familiar with Looper?
Yeah.
That you always get the what happened to Brendan Fraser?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, why won't Hollywood cast Brendan Fraser anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, because
there are
it's a shitty cesspool of a place sometimes.
Exactly, and it can be for sure. All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment, which is Review
of the Week.
And this week we have the brand new Angelina Jolie film, Those Who Wish Me Dead. It was scheduled for theaters sometime last year, got pushed to HBO Max, got pushed back, and then got pushed up once they announced that they were going to do theater and HBO Max on the same day. It is directed by Taylor Sheridan, written by Michael Coriata, Charles Levitt, and Taylor Sheridan, based on a book by Michael Coriata, however you say his name. I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. Starring Angelina Jolie, Finn Little, Nicholas Hoult, Aidan Gilliam, Jake Weber, Medina Senghor, and John Bernthal. So it's a film that takes place in kind of a woodsy area. I don't know if they even really say where it's at. It's kind of like a Western type of setup almost.
Well, at the beginning, they're in Florida because they talk about Jacksonville.
Oh, that's right. The two hitmen are in Florida. Yeah, so they're kind of making their way. I don't know if it's
I want to say it's like the Ozarks, maybe, or Smokies, potentially. That's kind of
Montana. Here we go.
Oh wow. Okay. So I don't know where Jacksonville and all that.
Well, because that's where. So that's why there's such a. So beginning of the movie, Angelina Jolie and her fire people, they're sitting outside. They're waiting to get to their jobs or where they're posting. She flashes to where she let some people die in a fire, and that's kind of why she's where she's at. Right. Then we cut to the hitman, played by Nicholas Hoult and Aidan Gilliam.
Yep.
And they are about to take out a couple and their child. They blow up this house in... they're not in Jacksonville yet. They're somewhere else. They're in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And then they go to Jacksonville looking for Weber's character, who is an accountant, a forensic accountant who uncovered... Jake Weber's character, who's a forensic accountant who uncovered... some bad things that people are trying to cover up. And so he takes his son and they head to Montana from Jacksonville.
Yep.
So then the hitmen find out where they're going by the house. Remember, they see the photo. So they take a plane to Montana while Jake Weber's character drives all the way. So they're kind of waiting for them when they get there. So then the movie pops off when they shoot at Jake Weber's car. The kid gets away, and then he meets Angelina Jolie's character, who then is basically supposed to protect this kid, who is actually the nephew of John Bernthal's sheriff character in the film. And that's where they were headed because the Jake Weber's character's wife was his sister who passed away from cancer. It's really depressing when you start realizing that this kid has watched everybody in his life get murdered or die in front of him.
I think the kid's just bad luck, personally. Yeah. I mean, Angelina Jolie gets the shit kicked out of her throughout this movie.
She does. My wife, Rebecca, afterwards, she's like, it shouldn't be those who wish me dead, those who wish everybody around me dead. That's pretty much what happened. I mean, it's very true. The kid's kind of like a shit magnet.
I gotta tell you, it is a lot of fun to hate Littlefinger again.
Yes, it was. He even though there's this, because I saw this mentioned in a review. I think they never really explain why, but he has a problem with killing like children, like small children.
Right. That was one of the complaints with some of the reviews. It's like, what is this? A conflict of conscience?
Yeah. Which it's very, if you pay attention to the very beginning of the movie when they blow up the house, Nicholas Holt's character turns to him and says sorry, because when they walk into the room in the beginning of that scene, you hear a baby cry, and then they walk out and they blow the house up, and you can kind of see the distress on Aidan Gillen's face, and that's where he goes, I'm sorry. And so to me, knowing that people had a problem with that thing, that people were like, why would he not want to shoot this pregnant woman? Knowing that going into this movie made me go, oh, well, this is that scene setting this next scene up.
Right.
But it just, if you miss, it's honestly, it's a blink and you miss it scene. So if you missed it or you weren't paying full attention yet, you may not have noticed that they were tying that to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I missed it, but I wasn't overly critical.
Right.
Trashing the movie because of this. It's like, well, pay attention maybe.
Right.
And
exactly.
this includes me. Hey, pay attention.
It was definitely, coming from Taylor Sheridan, Hell or High Water, Sicario, and Wind River, I was expecting more. But it really was just kind of like a straight-up action flick, like an action survival flick. And I like that aspect of it. I thought the effects were really cool. The fire stuff was really badass looking. Mm-hmm. Angelina Jolie is great. I mean, when is she not? And so it was... It definitely, I think, what threw a lot of people off with this movie was the direction it went. Yeah. And that it wasn't as serious as I think people were thinking it was going to be, because Taylor Sheridan had written this movie and directed this one. He wrote the Michael B. Jordan one that we reviewed a couple weeks ago, Without Remorse. So he's kind of like, in critics' eyes, he's 0 for 2 in his last 2 features. But I enjoyed this film. I really had a good time with it. It's pretty quick. A lot of the action, it doesn't take very long to get through all this story and stuff. And while it's kind of like you don't really know why they're there, you don't really need to know why they're there, I guess. You know that they want to stop this information from getting out. And that's really their job. And they kind of say that a couple of times. Like, we got to do the job. That's it. We're here to do the job, and we got to do it.
I like the realism of the gunfights.
Yeah.
Because they're not just dead on every time.
No.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are trained military, professionals. Mm-hmm. And even they miss.
Yeah.
So,
no, for sure.
Realistic. I appreciated that.
No, it was, especially when you're in like a fight like that, you got to imagine that your accuracy is not going to be as good as it would be if you're standing up shooting and sniping somebody. There's lots of good performances that I think in it. Aidan Gillen, I'll be honest, I thought he was okay. I like him better with his accent. Nicholas Hoult I thought was good. John Bernthal, I loved seeing John Bernthal on screen. So
absolutely.
Anytime the Punisher or Shane from Walking Dead can show up, it's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, his role in Wolf of Wall Street, even.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just, yes.
That's true, I forgot about that, yeah. He's so good. But it really is Angelina Jolie's movie, and the kid. The kid, too. I believe this is like his first movie. And he was really good. And I thought he did a good job. He sold it.
It was believable. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that he's a terrified kid that doesn't want anybody else around him. He just, he's been through a shit ton. And, that's how a kid's going to be, kind of not going to follow everything you say.
Right, exactly.
It was just a believable role for, like, a kid in that situation.
Yes. And he did, like I said, he did a really good job. And, you get to see Angelina Jolie get her ass kicked by falling out of a tower, struck by lightning, falling down a hill, caught in a fight, gets her ass kicked, still comes out victorious. So,
potential hypothermia.
Yes, potential hypothermia, yes. Mother Nature has it in for Angelina Jolie in this movie, or Thor, or any sort of Greek or Norse god that you want to choose from, because she really kind of gets her ass kicked. But she handles it well. And it's nice to see her back in the movie. I know she's going to be in Eternals at the end of the year, but It's kind of a warm-up, I guess. And this movie fits really right at home, I think, on HBO Max. It's not like a huge, big blockbuster or anything. It did make a lot this weekend, and I think most people probably watched it at home. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, despite what critics say.
I want to find a pickup truck and a parachute for sure. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the movie because it's pretty funny.
Yes, it
and
is.
Something that stupid people they're probably going to go try.
Yes, and one of my favorite lines too was when they're talking about the kid. She's talking about the kids that she lost in the fire, and he's like, "Yeah, I watched my mom die of cancer." She's like, "Wow, really, it's hard to feel bad for myself with talking to you, kid." And it's because he just watched his dad get killed and his mom died of cancer, so it's obviously she's like, "Wow, I sound like a bitch." So. Obviously, we're recommending it. Go watch it for yourself. Don't listen to what all the critics say. I think it's a pretty enjoyable film. Again, like I said, I think it just wasn't as serious as a lot of people were expecting.
Do you think that it would have helped if Tyler Perry and that whole thing was a little bit more established?
Probably, if it gave that a little bit more of a backstory.
I mean, even like a little 5 to 10 minute blurb, just to kind of like.
There is definitely some plot holes. I think that if you focus on too much, could take you out of it maybe. But I think the movie was just meant to be a lot simpler than your own, like, well, why is he doing that? What's he got to do with it? You don't always need an explanation. Sure, it helps, but sometimes the explanations aren't really that great and they don't help the movie along anyway, so that's why they're not in there. You just needed to know that he was someone who worked for somebody and wanted to get a job done, and that's what he paid those guys to do, was get the job done. And it was weird seeing Tyler Perry as kind of a villain, even though you really don't get to see him be villainy necessarily, but he is a villain in the movie. All right, so that moves on to our next topic, which is why this movie. So this time around, just based on the premise alone, which I think was misleading, let me go to, it's called Rooftops. It's from 1989, but I want to go to Amazon real quick here. Because Amazon makes it sound a lot more different than what the movie was, Wayne.
While he looks for that, I'm going to give you what the little blurb we get from IMDb. A skilled young street fighter battles criminals across the rooftops of New York City.
That's exactly what. So reading that premise, I'm like, so it's like Enter the Dragon, but on rooftops. This could be kind of cool. It's not that at all, people. Not at all.
10 minutes into the movie, I'm like, they're breakdance fighting. I immediately went full Zoolander.
They were breakdance fighting. Him and
that Hansel, he's so hot right now. Hansel.
Oh my God, there was a lot of breakdance fighting. It's funny. So it stars Jason Gedrick, Troy Bayer, Eddie Velez, Tisha Campbell Martin from Martin Lawrence's TV show Martin.
Damn, Gina!
Alan Payne, who was the one that was breakdance fighting with him. Luis Guzman makes an appearance, a very small role. It's that plot doesn't really help describe. It's about a kid who's homeless, who lives on the street named T, played by Jason Gedrick of Baywatch fame, and he kind of like makes his way on the street by like street dancing and street fighting, but dance fighting with people where they're not actually hitting each other. That's the goal of the fight with Alan Payne, is like they're not supposed to actually hit each other, to see who can go the longest without hitting anyone. They do end up bringing Capoeira in. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I'm probably not. Which I love because it was in the movie Only the Strong back in 1992, which I was a huge fan of. So I was glad they brought that in, because that's basically fight dancing is what that is. And that fits perfectly into this film. The only thing is, like I said, you heard Wayne's description. That's not what this movie is. There are some rooftop fight scenes, but they're mostly towards the end of the film. It's not a movie about a guy going around avenging people on rooftops, which is what that description sounded like. It's a love story, which is basically West Side Story, or Romeo and Juliet, which everybody, if you know, West Side Story is based on Romeo and Juliet. Interesting enough, Robert Wise, the director of West Side Story from 1961, directed this film.
Oh!
So it was his last theatrical film. He was really old when he made this one. But he was a 4-time Academy Award winner from Sound of Music and West Side Story, and he did Rooftops. So I'm like, What? Like, I don't.
I didn't hate it. I actually really enjoyed it. I really did.
And what's as ridiculous as this movie is, I agree because it reminded me of something like Legend of Billie Jean, which is a movie I love from the 80s. It had that same nostalgia of the 80s to it.
I was trying to place Jason Gedrick because I knew him from a lot of things. Obviously, The Heavenly Kid, 1985.
Yep.
The Iron Eagle franchise. I wanted to kick myself in the face.
One of the main guys.
That.
Yep. Yeah.
Obviously, he was in Born on the 4th of July, and our dear friend Andy Rohr's favorite, Backdraft.
Backdraft, greatest movie ever, Andy. I forgot he was in Backdraft.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched that too.
Tim Kerminsky.
Yeah, he plays the other. I believe he plays the other rookie. I think that's who he is. Great role for him in that classic movie about firemen in Chicago.
Award-winning, in my opinion, even though there were no awards to be won.
So Rooftops, it really does feel like a lot of those 80s films, and it's one of those ones I feel like if I watched it back in the early 90s, I probably would have really liked it. So I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. It's ridiculous. The dance fighting is kind of hilarious. When he just like is angry and drunk and runs into the guys doing the capoeira like in the middle of the street. He's like, or it was like a bar or something. And he runs and just randomly they're doing it in the middle of the bar. So he joins in, and then they end up teaching it to him while he's hammered drunk, and he ends up learning it apparently.
Let you know the drunken master.
Yes, right.
I mean, this was obviously made the same year that the first Ninja Turtles movie came out, right? Or was that 88?
That was 90 that 90? It came out.
But,
right around that time.
That, and just, seeing similar shots and whatnot. And for me, I just kept noticing the World Trade Center. In the background, I'm like, wow. Well, it honestly made me stop, take me out of the movie and go, yeah. I don't know if you have that same effect anytime you see it in the background.
I didn't actually. I didn't. I was too focused on the breakdance fighting.
Gotcha.
So I missed it. But, you're right. I mean, it makes sense because it's shot in New York among the rooftops. So you're going to see a lot of buildings, which you do.
Yeah.
And it's choreographed really well, I guess. The bad guys are not great. The one guy was really annoying. Oh, the one that ended up locking him in the tower and set it on fire. Like, that guy's voice really annoyed the crap out of me.
Was he the one with the mullet?
Yes.
Because, Lobo with the center part curtains of the hair.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't the real big one either. He was the other one that they killed. That the white dancer knocks off the roof. I think.
Ah, yes.
Or no, they knock him unconscious. The big guy. Cool. The big guy's the one that they knock off the roof.
Right. Again, when we're caught up with the artistic beauty of the breakdance fighting, we lose the plot a little bit. So.
Yes, and it does end, of course, with a chorus of people doing breakdance fighting at the end of the movie, which is how you want to end your breakdance fighting movie. So you do get that. So Rooftops, while maybe not a perfect film, it is enjoyable, and I think if you like a lot of the 80s movies, like Break-In and stuff like that, you'll enjoy this film for what it is. Just a really kind of interesting take, and interesting too that it's a mixed or interracial relationship in the between the two main characters, similar to West Side Story, which is why they I'm sure kept that. So that's always nice to see as well. It's obviously a West Side Story ripoff, but what isn't? And like I said, West Side Story is a ripoff of Romeo and Juliet. So. But, so anyway, we're moving on from that. Wayne, anything you watched this week you want to talk about?
I finished up Jupiter's Legacy.
And?
I liked it a lot.
Okay.
But it does kind of lose itself toward if you quartered out, the third quarter kind of gets a little bit bogged down, and the main characters struggle, I guess is the vaguest way to say it. But overall, it's got a boys feel to it. Very different from the boys, but, it's still got superheroes and shows the not so glimmering perfectionism. So that was really good. Let's see. I started watching The Ranch again on a whim because I just needed something in the background for falling asleep. And, for all of the drama behind it, and the cast and whatnot, it's still a really funny show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and finishing up Boardwalk Empire. I'm actually not finishing it up, but that marches on. I kind of toned it down a little bit this week just because.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much what my week encapsulated. So.
All right. I watched Apple TV's Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet, which is a TV show from the creators of It's Always Sunny.
Okay.
Stars Rob McElhenney, or however you say his name. He's one of the stars of It's Always Sunny. And it's just a really, really funny show about video. It's Mythic Quest Raven's Blanket is basically a, what do they call it? An expansion of a video game. And so it's about a video game company and kind of similar to like World of Warcraft. And so it really dives into that kind of world, and it's really, really funny. The characters are really rich and are really great. It's on to season 2 now. They did 2 specials over quarantine. One that was all done through Zoom, and then another one they did in person. And now season 2 has just started. I'm all caught up on that. That's a really good show. I'm going to catch up on Lucifer this week because that's coming. The new season is coming not this weekend, but next weekend. I think that's about it that I've watched. Trying to watch the stuff that that we set to watch during the week and stuff like that. I'm trying to catch up on Joe Bob. I haven't caught up on this season at all yet, so I've only just started the first episode. All right, so moving on to news for the week. All right, the Golden Globes have essentially been canceled for the time being, and Tom Cruise has returned to all 3 of his awards. I'm sure more celebrities will follow. They've had a lot of issues with inclusion in their society, if you will, or in their group of people, and they're apparently working on that. Edward Norton, Janelle Monáe, Catherine Hahn, and Batista have joined Daniel Craig in Knives Out sequel, which will be going straight to Netflix. Legends of the Hidden Temple, revival of the cult classic TV show coming to the CW. Kiefer Sutherland to star in spy drama series for Paramount+. Regina King is directing Bitterroot comic adaptation as her next gig behind the camera. It's about monster hunters. Adult Swim greenlights movies for Metalocalypse, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and the Venture Bros. I had an Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie before, so I'm interested to see where they go with the next one. This Is Us is ending after the upcoming 6th season. Enola Holmes 2, Wayne, has officially been announced at Netflix.
Nice.
Millie Bobby Brown has announced it herself, and her and Henry Cavill will both be returning. Paramount Plus reviving The Game, which aired originally on the CW before moving to BET. It contained both the original and new cast members. Shang-Chi and Free Guy are going to streaming 45 days after theatrical release. No one knows if that's going to be the Disney Premiere price where you got to pay $30 for it, or if it's just going to be streaming on Disney Plus for Shang-Chi, and probably Free Guy, I would imagine, would go to Hulu because that's, I think, more of an adult movie, I believe. David Tennant and Michael Sheen sign up for Good Omen Season 2. Bring It On Halloween to air on Sci-Fi next year. It is official. It is a Bring It On horror film. Apparently, it's going to be like a slasher about cheerleaders. So I'm actually kind of excited for that. Blackish renewed for 8th and final season. Russell Crowe to star in Poker Face, which is a gambling thriller. It's set to shoot in Australia soon. Boyd Holbrook from Logan and Shauna Renee Wilson from The Resident and Black Panther join Harrison Ford in James Mangold's Indiana Jones 5. Young Queen Charlotte from Bridgerton getting a spin-off. So in the Bridgerton show, she's known as Queen Charlotte. This will be one about her as a young queen. Shonda Rhimes will write the show. She is the creator of Bridgerton. Became a hit show when it debuted on Netflix earlier this year or end of last year. Gillian Anderson from X-Files joins The Greats for Season 2 on Hulu. Movies coming out. Kevin Hart's Fatherhood hits Netflix June 18th. Animated film Wish Dragon starring John Cho, Constance Wu, Jimmy Wong, Will Young Lee, and Natasha Liu Bordizzo hits Netflix June 11th. French Netflix series Lupin returns with Part 2 on June 11th. Jungle Cruise releasing in theaters and on Disney Plus premiere on July 30th. Friends Reunion hitting HBO Max on May 27th. Bosch final season debuts on Amazon Prime June 25th. Focus Features will release Robert Eggers' The Northman April 8th, 2022, starring Alexander Skarsgård, Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicole Kidman, Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, and New York. It's a Viking movie. Norman Lloyd, Dead Poet Society, and Salvatore from Alfred Hitchcock, dead at 106. The guy lived through a lot, worked with a lot of the great directors, had a great life, apparently, what they say. So that's our show for this week, everybody. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. For Wayne Yerke, I'm Mike Kirkpatrick. Thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.